Okay, we're recording. We're live.
Sweet. Oh my gosh. Well, hey, what's up, everyone? So, thanks for joining this webinar. I figured we can just go through this thing, and then we can go forward. So, this webinar is called Arts and Activism, Effective Visual Dissent. And the whole idea behind this conversation was wanting to help provide some resources for the SustainUS COP23 challenge applicants. A bit of background about me. My name is Ryan. I am a arts activist, community organizer that does a lot of like visual storytelling projects as well as a lot of different protest art about different issues, different causes. I'm gonna go through a couple of these examples in this presentation, but we can like probably, I think this will be more of a casual kind of flow of things, and we can just kind of like go into some helpful tips and like some lessons learned and kind of processes that I've kind of dealt with working on specifically creative intervention projects, or specifically how to use arts to affect change or to have some sort of purpose in movement building and in garnering wins. Hey Ben, thanks for joining us.
Hi.
Hey, so maybe we'll just go, I'm sure that more people will come probably like as this is happening, but maybe we'll just do like an initial intro with everyone that is here in the room or in this digital room. So I made my intro. I think we can go down the line. This webinar is recording, like, then maybe can we just go down like this ladder? I don't know if this is, all right. Deneen, do you want to?
Yeah, I'm Deneen, one of the two COP23 delegation leaders, and I'm calling in from Palermo, Maine, and I will tag Francisco. Francisco. Frozen. I'll tag Ben in the meantime.
All right. Hi, everybody. I am Ben. I use he, him. I'm calling in from, where am I? Washington, D.C. And I'm grateful to be here. And I would pass it on to Francisco, but we no longer seem to have Francisco for the moment. So I'll pass it back to Ryan.
Cool. Thanks. Cool. So yeah, maybe he'll come back. We'll see. You know, you love him, you let him go. No, I'm kidding. All right, sweet. So I am just gonna kind of go through some of these these slides, and we'll move through it. This first slide here has a picture of one of the most inspiring protest art groups that I know, and I'm really glad to know their work. This is a collective called Papel Machete. They make these really huge paper mache puppets and then use them in street demonstrations to pressure issues that are going on there. And yeah, they're a collective based out of Puerto Rico. You should look them up. They're amazing folks. But yeah, they're awesome. So I'm gonna move through this. So kind of how I wanted to kind of start this conversation was to think about the complexity of our world. So maybe just like to take a step back and actually like absorb for a second the many different issues that are going on all at the same time. And we live in a society that's like thrives off of visual stimuli. Like there's so much going on, whether it's, you know, your social media feeds or keeping up with the news or being able to process everything. We live in just such a digitally visual age. So I feel like this really underscores the need for us to use that to our advantage, to think about how we interact with political systems or movements, to use visuals as a means to share your message, to make change, to demand systemic solutions from whatever force of power you're trying to communicate with. So this is just a collage of images that I wanted to share just about thinking about the different issues that are going on, from racial injustice to, you know, white supremacy, ICE rates, to our current administration, to the indigenous struggles that are happening at Standing Rock and in other communities now as it's become a decentralized movement. And thinking about the moving forward out into climate justice. So that last one was this CO2 colonialism, imperialism. So even here we can start seeing even some of these different images. We can start seeing some examples of just like ways to communicate your message. I think one thing that I really like about this is the bottom right, a CO2 colonialism is a way to communicate two simultaneous messages at the same time. One being carbon emissions are destroying our planet, they're affecting global communities, and we're all interconnected in these systems. But at the same time, CO2, meaning carbon emissions, and then colonialism, talking about kind of the systems of power that have got us here, right? So colonialism of, you know, resource extraction, or geopolitical tensions where countries are intervening in the political climates of other places. So a lot of like that type of stuff is essential to think about when you're thinking about visual protest art, is like kind of the message. Francisco's back. Are you able to, do you want to quickly introduce yourself, Francisco?
Yeah, sorry, I just lost service really quick. My name is Francisco. I fight fossil fuels based out of California. I'm a student at UC Davis, and I helped Ryan direct a grassroots training program last summer actually, that produced a elite manifesto that we may or may not get into.
Definitely getting into it. Yay. Thanks, Francisco. Cool. And I'm stoked about this being a resource for the applicants, for any of the applicants that will catch this webinar later. A lot of this stuff, I hope it will help you in crafting, whether it's the submission for your creative challenge or whether it's actually creating protest art to make change where you're at. I think it's absolutely important to talk about. So hopefully this is a helpful session. So sweet. I guess we'll move on. So I wanted to kind of zoom out and kind of look at some specific examples of protest art projects that I've done, and kind of start dissecting them to see what are the elements of each specific protest art project make it effective for the purpose it's trying to reach. So I wrote a couple of purposes up top here of why do we use visual arts, or why do we use arts projects to, you know, as part of our movements, right? And these are just a couple. I'm sure that there's many more like reasons why, but these are just some that I want to dive into quickly. So we use visual arts as awareness, right? Like we are able to use protest art as a means for people to understand the message that you're trying to share. Secondly is we use visual arts in protest work to make concrete demands. If we're asking you know, a public official or you know, a figure of influential power to make a change or to push them in a different way, making something that is public, that's able to, is something that's really powerful for us to use public pressure to shape demands that you have as an activist or a community organizer. The third is consensus. So this is the idea of like, and I mean, this is a process that's more about rallying and like commonality in order to facilitate stronger like efforts that are brought together to make change. But for example, like, you know, during rallies or marches, when you work on protest art and you see all the different signs that are out there, you can tell that everyone's standing for a cause. And protest art can help mobilize the people that share your cause in order for there to be a stronger effort moving forward. And then the fourth thing that I wrote down was process. And this is something that I want to get into when we start getting into examples of protest art projects that aren't necessarily march-based, but more so collective inquiry projects or community-held projects, protest art projects that are ongoing and residual in a way, and we'll get into some of those later. But just to quickly end on this note, on this slide. So this is a protest banner that I made for the People's Climate March in 2014. And it has, it basically has these stickers that say, "Save the Delta, Stop the Tunnels," as the background, just to rep the group that is fighting these tunnels really heavily, Restore the Delta. Check them out if you can. They're doing a lot to try and stop corporate billionaires from extracting water and destroying California's rivers. And this has basically a scene of a tunnel vacuum that's sucking up water out of the region. And there are these like kind of corporate logos that are plastered along the tunnel vacuum that kind of want to, you know, share basically who's responsible. Like why are the rivers in like extremely damaged conditions and things like that. So before we move forward, I want to ask people in the webinar, so all of you, what purpose does this banner, do you think, serve out of the 4 up there? And it could be multiple, but and explain why, you would say. Does anyone want to go?
Yeah, I'll go. I think it definitely is awareness, because it shows all of these companies and corporations that are just like sucking water out of California. And I think it also shows consensus. So when people see that, they can know that they're down with Restore the Delta, because they're anti-water privatization as well.
Yeah, oh my gosh, that was dope. Thank you. That's right. Oh yeah. Okay, does anyone have anything else to say, or should we move on?
Just that you've done a beautiful job to putting in demands by repping the organization, but also using that as part of the visuals to sort of integrate with the awareness and consensus processes.
Thanks. Yeah. Heck yeah. Cool. Thanks, y'all. So I want to start moving into some of these other projects that we have here. So I wanted to share this. So what this is so at COP21, when I went as a delegate, we were working hard on trying to influence different negotiators during the in-between moments that they would be walking from meeting to meeting. And that, like, as observers, so we had observer badges. So if for any folks that end up coming to Germany, you will have an observer badge. And basically what that means is you're able to catch the press briefings that will happen. And you will also be able to, you know, do the same thing here of like interacting with negotiators in between these meeting spaces, but we don't have access to the meeting spaces actually, which is a bummer. But here, this is really where you make a really strong impact, especially because civil society is all present in these spaces, and you can really garner a crowd and help sway negotiators. So this is something that we all made together. So US youth and global youth gathered together to create these 2 banners, one saying "Youth Stand with the Climate Vulnerable Forum," and then the second saying "Full decarbonization, 100% renewable energy by 2050. So when we think about these, obviously we're trying to, when we're thinking about awareness, demands, consensus, or process, does anyone have an idea what this would be? Or, you know, or you can bring up another thing, but those 4 just to make it easier, I guess. I don't know. But does anyone want to kind of poke at what this could be?
I'd say most definitely demands. 0 by 2050 is clearly a very strong demand that people advocate there.
Yes, definitely. Thank you. Yeah, I think that like when we're thinking about arts projects, like always thinking about what you're trying to do with your visual arts project, like that's super important, because art is really essential to being able to visually communicate and externally present what ideas you have out there for the world or for whatever demands you have. Or but you know, when you're thinking about these projects, think about the purpose in which you're trying to do this and move it forward. So the Climate Vulnerable Forum is a partnership of the most impacted countries to climate change. They asked us to make this with them in solidarity because there was a lot of inequity around climate finance, around these countries being seen as expendable for the 2 degree mark, because they were really calling for 1.5 degrees Celsius, because the most impacted countries to climate change would be devastated first in a 2 degree scenario. So the message is very clear, right? You mentioned it being about demands, and I think that's important. Is when you work on these projects to move forward these demands and to make the most of them. So next, I just want to talk briefly about this, because there's many different ways in which you can do visual protest art, and some of which are using stories, and some of which are using content and media that lasts not in a mobilization or a protest or a march, but something that is more residual, something that you produce, get out into the world, and then the message travels just by your content being out there. So I work with a group called the Beehive Design Collective, and they make these really intricate murals. This is an example of one that tell these really intricate stories, but through metaphors of plants and animals that are native to the areas which we talk about. And those stories then tell these really intimate, but also really strong lessons about big picture issues in the world. So just a couple of examples that this graphic has been used to talk about is, talking about the impacts of NAFTA and like free trade and how corporate free trade really impacts communities, or neoliberalism. I want to talk about a specific example so that people get kind of an idea. So one of the characters in this graphic is this character called, I think it's the International Monetary Fund. And so there are these major institutions that are turned into metaphors of these like faceless characters. And the International Monetary Fund is this like sinister surgeon character. And it has this like 3-pronged syringe that's like sucking up water, oil, and DNA. And it has these like damn defibrillators that's like shocking the region and like trying to put infrastructure projects on Mesoamerica. There are these like leeches coming from this like jar that are like sucking up things. And the concept is really made clear when you think about the International Monetary Fund and what has happened in Mesoamerica, where, the damn defibrillators are literally talking about like, the shock doctrine, and talking about how, when you shock a region, when there's like a crisis and you take advantage of that region, then you are able to like shock the region into like putting forward your own agenda, which is what a lot of corporations have done. So there are these different ways in which you can think about metaphors, think about how that can even be really powerful. Like metaphors are a really potent way for people to pick up on heavy concepts in a really short amount of time. And also really strong storytelling tool, at least for this graphic. So also, I just wanted to mention that another person joined us. Can we get an introduction?
Hi, can y'all hear me? Cool. What were the intro questions?
Name, pronouns, where you're coming from. Did I miss anything, Deneen? No. Yeah.
Cool. Hi everyone. I'm Karina. She, her, hers, and currently in DC.
Sweet. Thank you. Yeah. So definitely when you're thinking about other projects that you want to take on, this is one, obviously a really lofty example of like arts activism that is really story based. But there are other projects too, and I'll pull some up if we have enough time. But I kind of just like drew up all this stuff, so we'll just see what happens as we get along. So I want to talk now about a couple of projects that are talking about process. So out of the 4 that we wrote, right, it was one was I forgot the 4 that I wrote. One was like demands. One was
Consensus.
Consensus.
Process.
One was process, yes, and then the 4th was like, it started with an A. I forgot.
Awareness.
Awareness.
I
Oh
just
my
wrote
God. I'm so, all right, cool. So this is an example of a protest art project that's about process, I want to say, just because I think that this was created in a really emotional way, and it's kind of funny because we're all on this call. So for people that are going to watch this webinar later, Ben, Deneen, and I worked nearly all night watching the election results, working on this people's to-do list.
Nearly, like literally all night.
Quite literally.
It's intense. And we made this to-do list to, at first, for the, because we were thinking it was going to be Hillary Clinton, and we were thinking a lot about how do we create something that's uses the concepts of like, public accountability and like social public accountability and being able to push forward demands to protect communities kind of as like a non-negotiable. So we came up with these items to just be like, these are the kind of mainstream core demands that we have as US youth that we are going to put out the day after the election to show that the US is not going to back out on its commitments to climate justice. So these items are the following. So I actually think if it's not, I don't think it'll be too bad of a glitch thing, but maybe I'll say an item and then we'll just like go down the screen and then like just go and then just like go down these items and then yeah. Okay. So the first one is work for climate justice.
Respect Indigenous sovereignty.
Honor the treaties.
Cut corporate ties.
Then Ben, you should go.
0 by 2050.
Cool. Break free from fossil fuels.
Commit to a just transition.
No corporate trade deals.
Stop militarism.
And human, what does it say? Oh, inhuman policies. Whoops.
And inhumane policies. And the last one is protect water. So so these items we made in like just kind of a flurry of a mix, and we wanted to bring this to the UN space specifically because we wanted to show that these were core demands that we would ask the administration, no matter who was in office, that these were the items that we wanted to see happen and see actualized. When it turned out that Trump was announced president, we all were heartbroken, shattered basically in our little riad together. And we were like, how is this list gonna work? Like Trump doesn't believe in climate change. Trump doesn't care about and like doesn't see the nuances of indigenous struggle and how important it is to think about how different communities are affected by historical trauma, all these things. It was super intense. And we were like, what are we gonna do? We just worked super hard on this thing. And one of our delegates, Remy Franklin, he was like, you know what? Like it's not up to him. It's not up to him or her or whoever, like I'm with no one when it comes to that. He was like, we should make it a people's to-do list. So in this really quick shift of events, we crossed out presidential and wrote people's and then went out and did this all-out massive unveiling, both inside and outside. And it was really beautiful and it was powerful. But what I want to bring to the people that are gonna look at this webinar later is that this project was a way for us to mobilize this public social accountability, to recognize and identify the things that we wanted to see happen in the world. And by people's, I think it made it even better because we weren't relegating or delegating our power to someone else. We were creating this to form the backbone of the society that we need versus the society that we don't have right now. And it's still a work in progress. We need to do something, we should do something with this list because it was a really powerful moment. It got a lot of global media. And I think that in future projects, when we think about future projects, and if you're thinking about protest art, whether you're in Germany or whether you're on the ground in another country, or I mean in the US, I meant the US, we can use protest art to like really make an impact and really inspire people and create like an exponential kind of chain reaction effect, because that's what we really need as youth activists, as climate youth activists. We need to support each other and we need to amplify each other's efforts. So next thing I want to talk about.
Ryan, can I add something just to that
Oh yeah, please go.
story? I just think there's also like through that process of making it, we also got to see like how the UN completely disregards other issues and intersectionality, because we also, to have actions at the UN, you have to submit what's going to be on your banner beforehand in the Google form, and they can approve or deny you. And we had on that list things like abolish prisons and fight for 15, and maybe Ben or Ryan remembers what else, but things that weren't directly related to climate change that we still believed needed to happen, and they weren't allowed. I was told, like, from when applying for this action to the UN Secretariat, that we could do it as long as we excluded those couple of points. So it was just really telling how, like, through this process of art making, we were able to see like how much this system really needs to change.
Yeah, and you were right about that. It was prisons. We were talking about prisons. We were talking about police brutality.
Yeah.
And I think we were talking about education or something. But they found that irrelevant to climate, which I was like, are you frills? Like, the whole concept of climate crisis is like the interconnectedness between different systems of oppression playing a role in like what's happening. So whatever. Anyway, let's move on. So the next thing I want to talk about is actually thinking about, as a creative person, or like, I'm sure all of you applicants are creative folks that are trying to use your your arts as a means for change. And I think one role that I didn't mention about protest art playing a role in is actually like healing and catharsis, because I think in a lot of ways, as activists and even as human beings going through the reality that the political climate's fucked, literally our world is like breaking down, there's so much fucked up things in the world. I hope it's okay for me to cuss in this webinar, but whatever. Like, there's all these messed up things happening in the world, and I think that, like, you know, the main thing that I find important about art is the fact that it allows you to express a deep emotion and allows you to kind of take it off your chest and be able to put it out there. And that leads me into this next slide, which I want to talk about, which was something that me, Francisco, and Karina were a part of. MMXVI, which was, you know, that represents 2016, last year. So last year, the three of us, alongside 5 other amazing badass trainers, co-led this week-long leadership program where we dove into social environmental justice principles and worked on different types of different projects to like help process the learning that we were having. And what was unique about that program was we actively, in the design of the program, we incorporated arts as research and arts as healing as these like major mechanisms of the program, because we wanted to be able to, you know, have people use creative ways to learn about these issues, because it makes it way more digestible, and also like more resilience building, I would say. Like, singing about the fact that species extinction is happening it's just helpful. And we also did these different projects that happened. So the 2 projects that I want to talk about here is one project that failed. And I want to say, not failed as in like it will forever be failed, but it was something that we tried to do really ambitiously and it didn't work out, which is a good thing. When you're working on protest art projects or when you're working on these massive projects, it's good to be ambitious. It's good to learn that maybe things won't end up being the way that you wanted them to be. So what I'm referring to is, through that program, we actually got a videographer, and a support person. They're both really lovely people from the Alliance for Climate Education, to come and record skits that we would make and parts of the program that we had. And we did that because we wanted to create a video portrait and kind of a catharsis kind of project of navigating what it would be like to be a millennial in post-apocalypse. That was the concept. So we made masks, we did these skits. We came up with ideas for skits and filmed them. We made this elaborate story together, all as a training program about how it felt to be a millennial in post-apocalypse and to go through this training program, as well as to, you know, tell this story that we created. And this is a screen from a part of the story, which was this concept of the characters, these two characters playing an eternal chess game. And one of the characters is called the Void, which represents all of what is like negative and evil about the world. And then this other character called the Visionary, which represents all of what is good in the world and all of what makes life like worth living. And we told this story of these two metaphorical characters to help process ourselves emotionally what was going on in our world, in our planet. And yeah, and it was made up of this story, made up of a ton of other skits. It was like a really cool project, but it was really difficult to edit after. So it could be in progress or it could not be. But I think the long story short to take from this is that when you're working on your arts projects, you know, try to do the most that you can, but try to aspire to do something really badass to really make the impact and make the change that you want to see happen in your community. But if it doesn't end up happening, don't beat yourself up about it. Take the lessons that you've learned from this situation and move it forward into your activism work. Move it forward into other ways of creative intervention that you want to see happen. So yeah, so that's that. Do either you two want to say anything, or you want to just move on? Sorry, don't want to put either of you on the spot. Okay, you're both cool. I just want to clarify.
Wait, I'll say really quick. Yeah, this was super fun to film. Each of these, you can see on this photo, it has past, present, and future. And each of those kind of had their own like backstory to what was going down. But it was just really amazing. Hopefully we can still do something with it, even though it's not technically finished.
Yeah, we still have the footage. I'm sure that it'll turn into something. It's just the reason why it meant like the time crunch was really tough was because last year, I don't know about any of you that are watching or any of you that are here, last year felt like just like the most post-apocalyptic year ever. Like there was just so many things going on all at once, and I was just like, damn, the end of the world is just like here, what's up? And like it was intense. So we made this project to be like, damn, like 2016 will not be known as the year that all this shit is fucking happening and nobody does anything. We like tried to be like, MMXBI is this like stand, like it's a call to action. We're gonna make this year the start that like the revolution's gonna get full throttle, homie. But you know, we recognize that actually 2016 wasn't the post-apocalyptic year because then 2017 happened, you feel? So, but hey, stay chill, homies, you know. All right, let's move on. This is so bad. Can't believe it's so goofy right now. Whew. Okay, I wanted to share this. I wasn't able to screen cap this, sorry, to like show you a little draft of this, but dang, I don't know how to move this. I'm gonna move this away for a second. Oh, sick, okay. So I wanted to share this just for people that are watching to check out an example of another process project that Francisco, Karina, and I were a part of as well. So for folks, does anybody know what the LEAP Manifesto is in this chat room? Anybody? Maybe would either you, Deneen, or Ben want to explain what it is? It's cool if not too. I can, all right, I'll go for it, for sure. Sorry, y'all, my bad. So the LEAP Manifesto was something that, so Naomi Klein, who's like this really badass social activist and author, she's from Canada, she did this really badass thing where she gathered Indigenous leaders, business leaders, environmental groups, basically the spectrum of identity from Canada. She got them all together at this conference and was like, we need to create something that will really impact and change the direction of Canada, because right now Canada is playing a huge role in the climate crisis. There's all the tar sands oils that are going on there, the tar sand issues, sorry, that are going on there. There's, you know, all the different pipelines that are going through. And they came and they wrote together this manifesto called the LEAP Manifesto. And it was something that really outlined very like simply, like really basic needs to create a functioning, healthy society. And it was incredible. Like, they were talking about access to education and healthcare, and talking about a basic minimum living wage, or like a basic universal income is what I meant. And all these really cool concepts. And it got major press. It got major global attention. A lot of famous people ended up taking part in the LEAP Manifesto. So like Rachel McAdams and like Arcade Fire and a ton of other folks too. And it really shaped up a strong momentum for resistance in Canada. Not to say that it's not like a perfect catch-all solution. I mean, the manifesto still exists and there's still efforts to make it happen. But I feel in the act of doing this, you're really able to build collective inquiry about what a better society looks like, and how we're able to build that society, and how to move it forward. So this is, if you want to check out the draft that we created, because we created a California version of this manifesto that we wanted to use as an open source project for California students to look at, engage with, and be able to build the movement in this like kind of like thought heavy way. Check it out. It's something that we worked really hard on collectively, and are still trying to piece together for the future. Sweet. So
Can I add to that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Cool. So the reason why it's called the LEAP Manifesto is because we can no longer take small steps to where we need to go. We need to leap, so to speak, especially when it comes to energy democracy. So the LEAP Manifesto is also this like demand to make this shift now.
Also, I would add that one of the reasons why it's so important is because our culture is just filled with all these like negative, narratives and just harsh things going on all around us. So the manifesto kind of envisions a future that's possible and provides a counter narrative, so people can like have something to believe in instead of like having to just like fight, or be negative all the time.
Yes, gold. Those are such beautiful contributions, y'all. Damn. Anyway, cool. Here's to better worlds. We'll drink about it later. Cool. All right, so next thing I want to talk about this really quickly, because I feel like everyone here like knows this a lot. But actually, I should talk about it a long time, because people that are watching this may have never seen this. Okay, so this is talking about the concept of visual storytelling. I want to dive into a little more. Critical education and DIY movement media. So I wanted to go through this comic book really quickly to explain an example of a project that attempts to connect organizations' efforts together for collective liberation. And I want to encourage applicants to think about ways in which you tell your story that play a purpose in the movement. So, making songs about these heavy issues like that matters, because you're able to impact and connect with people that may have never thought about an oil spill. But then if you're creating music about it, then you're engaging people in a new way. If you decide to make, like me, like try and make a comic book about heavy issues, then you start building dialogue with folks that may not have ever talked about or learned about these issues. So I think that when you think about your creative projects, think about the purpose and think about how this moves what you're trying to achieve in that. So yeah. So this book is called West Coast Water Crisis. It's a comic book that goes through 4 different chapters, and it's obviously about the impacts of communities because of the drought in California. So that's why the West is drying up. This is a compass rose. There's like a swirl storm in the center. So each of these chapters are directly correlating to work that is happening on the ground right now in California, folks that are organizing heavily to stop these different issues. So this first chapter is called Toxic Town, and it's talking about environmental racism and disproportionately affected communities, specifically communities in the Southern Valley of California, Southern Central Valley of California, where fracking is happening at rampant levels. Communities of color, particularly, are the folks that are right next to these rigs, and a lot of the times children are most impacted by these health impacts that fracking rigs and the burning of fossil fuels are doing. And the folks that are doing great work to solve this issue is the Center on Race, Poverty, and the Environment. They do a lot of litigation work. So they have offices in Delano and in Oakland, and they do a lot of litigation work to protect these communities in the midst of all this messed up stuff that's happening. So in this chapter, you see that there's a kid laying on a hill. There's this fracking dragon that has massive billows of smoke and like metal and wings and all this stuff like circling around him. And this is supposed to represent and bring up the dialogue of environmental racism because it's a real issue that impacts not just people in California, but all across the nation. I'm sure that some of you applicants probably have examples of this kind of stuff happening where you're at. So, you know, trying to stand in solidarity and understand how different people are impacted is really important. The second chapter is chapter 2, which is called Running Out of Water. And this one is really talking about migrant justice and food security issues. Specifically, there was a Food and Water Watch, the group that this is inspired off of, did this really awesome expose on crops and products that are watered with fracking wastewater. That is just super controversial because you don't know the impacts of that on yourself. And I think that it's important for that to be navigated, as well as migrant injustice issues. So thinking about, at least specifically when we think about California, a lot of food injustice issues are happening here where some of the most impacted communities are not able to make a living, even though they're picking produce for the nation. So this issue this chapter is really talking about those different issues and bringing them up. The third is about Restore the Delta, and it's talking specifically about water privatization and species extinction. So for a lot of my work has been fighting the twin tunnels, which are these infrastructure projects that cost $25 billion federally, like the entire country will give $25 billion to put forward these tunnels that would extract water out of the Sacramento-San Joaquin River Delta and send that water to corporate agribusiness and oil industry for profit. Using local resources for global, like, for global, like, riches for a few people is just not right. So this chapter is kind of representing that with the tunnels, like, kind of looming over this, like, this girl who's, like, on the surface of the water. So this is from underneath. And then on the bottom there are delta smelt, which are these indicator species that recognize their populations indicate the health of a region. And it's actually really sad. There's been a lot of conversation around the salmon species, the salmon decline and the delta smelt and species extinction. But this chapter is supposed to kind of represent those pieces of the story as well. And then the fourth chapter, which I think is something that I think is really important to think about when you're thinking about protest art, is how are you able to link struggles together? This is a chapter that is called Climate Justice Now, and it incorporates all 3 elements of the last 4 chapters. So the fracking dragon is at that top left there, from Toxic Town. There's the hose from running out of water at the bottom left, and then at the bottom right there are the tunnels from the last chapter, waiting in the river. And there's a hand that's shooting out that says Climate Justice Now, and it's the protest sign. And this was originally designed, when the book is finished, this specific chapter was actually going to be a choose your own adventure. So there's like 2 different stories, 2 different possibilities happening here, which I think is representative in this chapter too. Is Climate Justice Now has this hand that's shooting up. And one possibility is that this is just one hand and they're drowning under the weight of all these issues happening at the same time. So they are unable to keep this message going. They're falling, they're fading away. Everything's going on, it's fucked up, things are being polluted, water's getting sucked up, this fracking dragon's causing so much like health problems everywhere. And it's just like disheartening. The second possibility is this hand that says Climate Justice Now and shooting up this message is the beginning, the birth of an exponential amount of effort of multiple hands making light work, where this one hand is actually one of a choir of tons of hands underneath the water, pushing water up as the value of, like, for its value in life and how it should be protected and nurtured and sacred, and fighting across these issues together by being aware of these issues and trying to work and find weak links in the systems of oppression to break those, to be able to break and solve these issues at the same time. So obviously the second possibility is the best one, the better one, I would say. And I think that when you're thinking about your own work and you're thinking about trying to make change in your community, there are really powerful examples of things that have happened in one place that help change and shift in another place. So for example, the energy around specifically the Maori people in New Zealand, for that river to be designated to get legal human status sets a precedent. It sets a physical precedent for protecting rivers that are around the entire world. You know, things that are trying to find those moments, those pieces of narrative that really do change and affect not just the issue that you're focusing on, but helps spark change in other places. I think when you think about protest art projects, if you want to do deeper projects, it's aside from march stuff or rally stuff, how you're able to do that, I think is really cool and something that you should definitely think about trying to do. But yeah, so we'll go on further. Oh, great. So yeah, that was kind of some of that. Does anyone have any questions or anything about that? Oh shit.
That was beautiful, Ryan. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
It was so wonderful. And the first, or the third slide of you with the the climate crisis, it reminded me a lot of the one that you made in Morocco. Remind me exactly.
The SB one.
Yeah,
The
it's
SB one.
exactly like that, because you're calling out the companies, and I totally see where you had that inspiration. It gives it a whole new roots to it for me, that banner.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, yeah, thanks y'all. I really hope that this stuff has been helpful. And I hope that just sharing some of this process is something that will help you all, and also any of the applicants that are planning on submitting creative challenge entries to do stuff that that impacts, and why not, if you're creating something to try and come out to Germany this year and represent our country, why not have it also serve some sort of purpose, an active purpose on the ground here in this country too, right? So I hope that through some of these examples of projects, you're able to think about ways in which you can engage with the movement and help support the movement while also being a part of this beautiful challenge, which I think for skills and building knowledge. Just a little bit of background. A lot of this stuff has been an ongoing process of figuring out. I think it's it's already hard enough to hone in your creativity and be an artist and work on projects in that way, but to direct it to a cause or an effort is challenging. So be patient with yourselves, keep at it, try your best to make the best impact that you can in a creative way, yeah, I hope it goes well for you, for sure. And yeah.
Ryan, we're all so grateful for you. I feel like watching this, it just confirms that you embody the creative challenge in everything you do. And so
shut up.
I couldn't mean that more wholeheartedly. It's so true. So we're so lucky that you gave this to us. Thank you.
Yeah, for reals. I'm stoked that you're recording this, because there's a lot of good thoughts and a lot of good energy. And I mean, it sucks because hopefully a lot of people, it doesn't suck. Hopefully a lot of people are able to take value from this session or whatever.
Definitely.
Cool. So can we close off with some sort of cool way to close off? I'm gonna close this off with a song because I love singing, you know what I'm saying? And creative challenges are sick because you can sing. Kyle Lemley, good job. I don't know if I pronounced your last name right, but you did a great job singing. I swooned.
You pronounced it right.
Okay, cool. So I'm gonna sing a song that everyone here knows and loves. Is that cool? This is a song that I feel like in a lot of ways like process based, because I think it helps us build morale and understand that we're not really alone in this crisis, and that there's many people that care about these issues and want to make a difference. So take comfort in that, so that you're like part of a constellation instead of an isolated human. So this was made by the beautiful Rachel Schragus. This song called It's the Same Thing. And it really reminds us that from Stockton to Maine to, I think you said DC, Ben, to Davis, to DC again, to all the other places that all the applicants are coming from, climate change is happening in different ways all over, but we are all here and we're all ready to make an impact and change this system, because we're the ones that are going to be living it. So, all right. So I'm going to sing it because I feel like if we tried to do the like alignment, harmonizing, it might be off. I'll just sing it for you all. All right. Is that cool? Ooh, ah, ooh, ah, ooh, ah, ooh. Ooh, ah, ooh, ah, ooh, ah, ooh. There are some places I've been that you have not been to. There are some places I've been that you have been to too. There are some places you've been that I have not been to. There are some places that we have not been to yet. Ooh, ah, ooh, ah, ooh, ah, ooh. There is one question with 1,000 answers, or perhaps only one answer for 1,000 things to ask. But hey, don't you know there's no need to feel dejected, because all of our grievances are connected. Ooh, ah, ooh. Ah, ooh, ah, ooh. Ooh, ah, ooh. Wow, ooh, ah, ooh. And everywhere I go, I see a different situation, but everywhere I go, I see the same thing. Everywhere we are, we're in a different situation, but everywhere we go, we know the same thing. And there is one question with 1,000 answers, or perhaps only one answer for 1,000 things to ask. But hey, don't you know there's no need to feel dejected, because all of our grievances are connected. Okay, yay! Whew, that was a little quick one. Yay, y'all. Cool.
Yay.
Sweet. Well, thanks for joining, y'all.
We love you, Ryan.
Show. Yep, y'all, totally. And also, hey, any of you Creative Challenge applicants are, curious about trying to like stay in community and build power, even after the climate talks, SustainUS is starting this badass training collective that incorporates multiple leaders in the movement to share skills and best practices I'm gonna be holding it down here in California with the Solidarity Organizing Program in that way. So start some shit up in your own hometowns, in your own places, and let's share some stories and case studies of dope shit so we can build this world in a better way. You feel? That's it. Ew, I'm kidding. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's right.
Right.
Yes.
Mm.
You're the best.
You are
Y'all
so
classic. Thanks for
perfect.
coming. So sweet to see your faces too.
I'm going to conclude the recording. Bye.